It's not often we get to see Sid Kageno showcasing a lot of passion and emotion in the series, because most of the time, he seems to be quite detached from things unrelated to his Eminence in Shadow routine. But in the recent Season 2 Episode 10, we will be able to witness his intense passion as he tries to convince Rose Oriana to not throw away her convictions and chase after her dreams. And speaking of Rose, more of her internal conflict and her reason for betraying Shadow Garden will be revealed in the episode as well. As usual, there will be spoilers for those that haven't watched the episode yet, so here's a spoiler warning just in case. If you enjoyed this episode breakdown and cut content video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well, it really helps. With that said, Season 2 Episode 10 is titled Cage Bird and it will be adapting the storylines of the Volume 4 light novel, mainly Chapter 1 and partially from the beginning of Chapter 2. Now then, the episode starts with an anime original sequence showing Lambda bringing reinforcements from Alexandria to what seems to be a Japanese ryokan owned by the Mitsukoshi company, and it was cute the way they disguised it as a school field trip. It was also explained why Lambda had personally brought the reinforcements, because as the instructor of number 666, she felt responsible for a betrayal and had wished to personally deliver the punishment upon the traitor. However, when she learns that the matter will be handled by the Master Shadow, it was funny how she along with Omega and Kai were over-exaggerating his wrath as some death sentence when in reality, he couldn't even care less if number 666 has betrayed Shadow Garden and he definitely won't be harming Rose as well. In any case, Sid was outside the palace trying to figure out ways of entering, and the episode actually adds some background details, like having the locals complain about the current state of affairs within the Oriana Kingdom. Then as Sid was about to use his magic to enter the palace, he encountered Epsilon outside, and using her public persona as the pianist Chiron, he was allowed entry using the cover story of being her apprentice. Although unlike the light novel, the episode doesn't really expand upon how famous she is, because she was actually regarded as the greatest pianist in the world thanks to her innovative musical pieces and amazing technical skills. But moving on, as they were walking through the hallways of the palace, Epsilon explained to Sid that regardless of race, gender or social status, as long as you are talented in a specific art form, you are welcome and respected by the people of the Oriana Kingdom. However, they do look down upon people who partake in swordsmanship or fighting because they consider those as barbaric. That's why many have always disliked Rose for pursuing such a skill. And I found it funny that throughout her explanation, Sid was internally calculating the amount of slime that Epsilon is using for her boobs, but he was still impressed by her precision and fine magical control to maintain the figure nonetheless. Sid even goes the extra mile to mention that Epsilon was constantly adjusting the slime so that it will move with a center of gravity and give it a natural jiggle. But jokes aside, Epsilon will inform Sid that Shadow Garden has already infiltrated the palace, and we even see Kai serving as a butler while Omega was working as a maid. Then their conversation was interrupted by Perf Asset, and his interaction with Epsilon pretty much followed the light novel, although the episode did have the additional detail of Sid internally voicing his opinions on Perf, describing him as the classic evil aristocrat archetype. Perf then became suspicious of Sid, so he was asked to perform a musical piece to prove that he was indeed Chiron's apprentice. And this wasn't mentioned in the episode, but Perf intentionally gave this unreasonable request because he was trying to embarrass Sid, not knowing how talented he actually was. And what's crazy as well, Sid was even somewhat impressed by Perf's cookie-cutter villain approach towards a background character like him. But anyways, as Sid was getting ready to perform, there were some minor differences between the episode sequence and the light novel. For instance, the nobles were quite jealous that he was the apprentice of Chiron and they were looking at him with animosity in the light novel, whereas here in the episode, they were simply taking his performance as a mere distraction and were not expecting much. Additionally, Sid checking out all the valuables of the nobles and later stealing from them while doing his performance were anime original sequences. He then starts to play his usual Moonlight Sonata piece, which manages to captivate and impress everyone including Epsilon, and seeing Epsilon's exaggerated reaction and excitement for Sid's performance definitely made the overall sequence even funnier. That said, after he finishes stealing from the nobles, playing the piano, Perf was so impressed that he wanted to know his name, and it was during this interaction that Sid noticed something inside Perf's pocket. He would use magic to see what was inside, and with the wire technique from his John Smith persona, he easily stole the Ring of Succession. It was definitely a nice detail to have him incorporating past techniques for other matters. Now, unlike in the light novel where Sid assumed the ring was for the wedding and feeling bad for Perf after he stole it, this train of thought was moved to much later in the episode. So to continue, Sid would live with Epsilon, and it wasn't really mentioned in the episode, but it seems that the maids were constantly monitoring them, which was likely ordered by Perv. But with help from Epsilon, he had a chance to leave, although Margaret, a maid that used to serve under Rose, soon interrupted them and offered to give him a tour of the palace. Sid reluctantly agreed, and I can't believe he destroyed Epsilon like that when he commented about Margaret having 0% slime. I guess that's why Sid described sensing Epsilon's anger and hostility towards Margaret in the light novel, which the episode failed to capture properly. Having said that, Sid followed Margaret to the Rose Garden, and their conversation about his future prospect as a musician was pretty much the same with the light novel, and him contemplating about becoming a pianist after hearing the amount of money he could earn was again so on brand for his character. And the episode adding the detail of Margaret holding onto Sid's hand in a similar manner to Rose back in season 1, and him using the same technique to escape was really hilarious. He would then ask about Rose, so Margaret briefly explains to him that Rose used to be loved and respected by the people, even if she was considered weird for taking up swordsmanship. However, after Rose killed her father, he had thrown the entire nation into chaos, so everyone now hates and blames her for everything, including Margaret. That's why, even though she returned to the Oriana Kingdom, many still don't acknowledge her as the queen. That being said, the following sequences involving Margaret telling Sid about Rose's whereabouts were quite different in the light novel as compared to the episode. To explain, in the light novel, Margaret only promises to tell Sid if he is willing to consider her parents' offer about endorsing him as a musician, and even though he agreed, he actually thought that she was just trying to scam him. But as they continued with their conversation, Sid was called away by a guard named Kevin, who was apparently even more delusional than Sid, fantasizing and believing that Margaret loved him when in reality, she finds him to be absolutely creepy and hates him for always staring at her. Even Sid knew that Kevin the guard was delusional, so he simply followed along and sarcastically congratulated Kevin for his unorthodox love as he runs away to find Rose. Now, as for how it happened in the episode, Sid would ignore Margaret and quickly sneaks away. But instead of thinking that Margaret is a scammer, Sid believed that she was trying to convert him into some weird religion just like what Rose did back in season 1. This was also where he would encounter Kevin the guard, and this was basically the same as the light novel. Even Kevin's rant about being looked down upon by musicians. And which version do you think was funnier? I personally thought both were decent. Let me know your opinions in the comment section below. Going over to Rose, the part where she contemplates about her current situation after her parent betrayal against Shadow Garden, and her worrying about the eventual conflict between Shadow Garden and the cult that will take place in the kingdom went accordingly to the light novel. However, her thoughts were interrupted when Sid appeared on the balcony, and unlike what we saw in the episode where she immediately embraces him, Rose was trying to restrain her emotions and behave more coldly towards Sid in the light novel. But besides this, there were some additional changes as well, such as the episode not showing Rose internally thinking that Sid's gaze was full of passion and misunderstanding his intention, believing that he is here to run away with her. Also, when Sid was explaining to Rose how he managed to gain access to the palace thanks to his pianist friend, the episode doesn't mention how she was touched by this because she misunderstood his meaning again, and believed he sacrificed everything just for her when he barely did anything. As for Sid's following lecture about Rose giving up on her dreams despite what she has done and having endured everything for so long played out exactly as the light novel, although another minor detail regarding Rose misunderstanding Sid again was removed from this conversation. Essentially, when Sid said that he understood how she feels, he meant that he used to be mocked by people for wanting to become an eminence in shadow, but Rose assumed his dream was to marry her despite being a low-ranking noble. Honestly, this entire conversation has been Rose just overthinking his words, and it was really hard to take the scene seriously when we see him constantly stuffing himself with cookies in the episode. And I was surprised at how passionate and convincing he can be when it involves his Eminence routine, if only he treated people with such convictions. With that, Rose says her final goodbye to Sid, and it was a shame the episode didn't include his line of "I will never give up, not even if it means turning the world against me." This line will make their interaction even more impactful and emotional, even if Sid only chose to say this in a light novel simply for dramatic effect. But I digress. We then see Perv arriving to question Rose about hearing voices inside a room, and Sid was able to learn the truth on why Rose was so adamant about marrying Perv. Furthermore, this wasn't actually included in the episode, but after Perv took Rose away, Sid re-enters the room to enjoy some expensive snacks and tea. The light novel also has a brief sequence where Kevin the guard was later accused of stealing food and suspended from his duties. And even though this obviously doesn't add anything to the story, it would have been hilarious to see this play out in the anime. After Sid's meeting with Rose, he would leave the palace with Epsilon, and they were apparently staying at the Mitsugoshi Ryokan we saw earlier in the episode, although in the light novel it was described to be a more western themed hotel. Nevertheless, Epsilon was debriefing Victoria about her mission at Fort First while Sid was enjoying the amenities, and much of what they talked about, such as Epsilon planning on promoting Victoria to the same level as the Seven Shadows, Epsilon taking full responsibility for Victoria's failed mission, or the explanation on the importance of the ring were essentially the same with the light novel. In any case, they stopped their conversation when Sid came out from the hot spring, and it was hilarious how they both turned into completely different people. This was also a minor change, but in the light novel, when Epsilon was massaging his shoulders, Victoria was massaging his feet. Another aspect that wasn't shown in the episode was how he asked Epsilon if this was all free, still not knowing that he basically owns Mitsugoshi. Additionally, it was interesting that everyone in Shadow Garden basically views Sid as one of the many personas created by Shadow to help him easily operate in public without attracting attention, and that their ever dignified and powerful lord was actually the real person deep down. But in reality, this chill and lazy looking boy is the true Shadow, and I noticed that Delta seems to be the only one that has truly seen this side of him. Anyway, Sid then informed Epsilon about his successful undercover mission and that the matter would soon be resolved, which manages to impress both her and Victoria. Of course, typical to the series, Sid was simply referring to his Eminence in Shadow routine, but they misunderstood his meaning, believing he was talking about Rose's marriage, her involvement with the cult, and the ring to the mysterious secret weapon. That said, the episode closes with another original sequence where Perth is delivering his report to Mildred, and it seems that he still hasn't noticed the Ring of Succession is gone. In addition to this, Mildred also reveals his plan on using the ring's power to unlock an ancient weapon so that he can reinforce his position within the cult, and Perth was even promised a seat on the rounds. Then another shocking revelation, Queen Reyna is apparently sleeping with Perth, and we will likely discover more about their relationship in the upcoming episode.
ちょっとあんたいい加減にしな
スライム率 0% か
So yeah, that was my breakdown for the Eminence in Shadow Season 2 Episode 10, and despite some minor details being removed, it was still a good episode nonetheless. The episode also did a good job to expand characters like Sid and Epsilon, but especially Rose, really focusing on her internal conflicts and how isolated she is right now, with Sid being the only one that truly believes in her, even if it's for all the wrong reasons. But what about you? What are your thoughts on the episode? Did you like it, or do you think they could have done better? Feel free to leave your answers in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this episode breakdown and cut content video, don't forget to leave a like or subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button as well for more content like this in the future. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.